I initially started this video as a reaction to the inauguration and how ridiculous the mainstream media has been.
Still some tinkering going on with the inaugural address, but his aides have made really clear it's not like he's trying to ignore or paper over either what happened at the Capitol 2 weeks ago or what we've been through throughout 4 years of the Trump presidency. And the contrast on display tonight was so stark. I mean, those lights that are just shooting out from the Lincoln Memorial along the reflecting pool. It's like almost extensions of Joe Biden's arms embracing America. It was a moment where the new president came to town and sort of convened the country in this moment of remembrance, outstretching his arms.
And then I ended up in another rabbit hole of just kind of exploring how much of an idiot Joe Biden is. And then I ended up in another rabbit hole of how much of a dictator Joe Biden is. In short, 37 executive orders in the first week, when the previous record holder was only 2 executive orders in the first week. Yeah, obviously that's excessive. I think it's important to note this is most draconian executive orders. Now you can no longer say the words CHINA and the word VIRUS together in a sentence. So yeah, that's ridiculous. But in addition to my frustration with that, I also discovered that Joe Biden called out Donald Trump for his use of executive powers.
So there's not going to be any delay on the tax increases?
No, well, I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
In addition to Biden's authoritarian actions, the entire government seems to be following suit. The FBI says they'll use every available resource to go after people who were at the Capitol. And anyone they've caught has been immediately charged with insurrection, and that and they're being thrown in federal prison. I think most notably Brandon Straka, the guy who founded the #WalkAway campaign, was thrown in federal prison because they have some audio of him saying, "Grab the shield, grab the shield." But Hunt doesn't stop there, though. Listen to Ralph Brennan of the CIA describe threats that lie within our nation.
So I know looking forward that the members of the Biden team who have been nominated or have been appointed are now moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about what looks very similar to insurgency movements that we've seen overseas, where they germinate in different parts of the country and they gain strength, and it brings together an unholy alliance frequently of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
So libertarians are not excluded from the conversation. So I guess I'm on a list somewhere. But this, of course, paired with social media's mass silencing of the right, has led to a deafening silence among the average conservatives, and has led to a huge increase in activity by those desperate to educate the masses on social media. And unfortunately, the combination of the disappearance of the average conservative voice paired with the amplified voice of the conspiratorial right is playing into the hands of those in power. So the question arises, what do we do? I'll just say off top of my head 3 things. First, understand that the average American does not care about what goes on in government. He really just wants to be left alone And you're not going to convince the masses with a Facebook post or two, especially if you've already been involuntarily relegated to an echo chamber. Second, understand that even if you disagree with someone, other Americans are not your enemy. As Abraham Lincoln said, that a house divided against itself cannot stand. He, of course, was referring to states disagreeing, but it applies to people too. And in that same vein of understanding that a common American is not your enemy, also understand that the average Americans have a common enemy who's supposed to be an ally, but is really only thriving because of its sowing of division among the average American populace. And third, don't give up because it's safe to do so. In the United States of America, is in a really bad shape right now. And if the US loses identity now, probably will never get it back. So if we apply these three things, understand that we have to obviously apply them carefully, and we have to do it without inciting violence or even looking remotely like we're inciting violence, and do it without looking like conspiracy theorists. And as I've said before, be honest about your beliefs, but understand what knowledge is lacking in your audience. So I'm going to give a few examples, but first, for example, a lot happened in November of 2020, and those who have researched it can probably win a court case with a mountain of evidence over it. But if you are starting a conversation with that, leading with that to your audience, you probably have been spoon-fed information by the mainstream media, then you've already kind of lost credibility in that conversation. Again, you can introduce the evidence later on, but it's not a good conversation starter. Present something that everybody can see, like happening now. So it's not looking like you're going to bring up something that's already been dismissed by the mainstream media or that has happened months ago. But present something that everyone can see. And if you lead with a question, if you lead without a question, you just look like you're ranting. So if you just say like, oh, the president is an idiot because he's doing these things and blah, 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 blah. Then you just look like you're ranting, like you're an angry person. So who wants to be in a room with an angry person? But if you present information with a question, then you are starting a conversation. So this video, for example, is an example of me presenting information in a constructive way. And my changing of course is an example, or are examples of me coming to the realization that led to me having this spiel on camera with you guys. Your goal should be to inspire someone to go and do research for themselves, not for you to teach them everything that you think they need to know. So an example of a question that you could present from something along the lines of this video would be do you think Joe Biden is operating like an authoritarian? Why or why not? And of course, be prepared to counter or help lead along any of the answers you were given, but don't scare them off with absolutism. Obviously, there's a correct answer to that question, but a person's definition of what an authoritarian is may differ from person to person. If they answer no, they don't think Biden is being an authoritarian, but give a decent answer as to why he isn't, then you could ask them if they thought Trump was being an authoritarian. And how they answer that will help you decide whether or not that conversation is worth continuing, because conversations like this are very sensitive and can be very time consuming. Tangent, but this is a good tangent to go on. I often equate conversations like this to football, the American one, not the rest of the world one. But imagine yourself as a quarterback, and it's like a tie game, and the objective is to get 10 yards, and you only have 4 downs or questions to get to that first down again. But so by the third down or the third question, you should have a good idea as to how to continue in how you're playing the conversation. Again, your opponent is a fellow American, so your objective isn't to Hail Mary or completely sack them if they're on the offensive. But if you're within inches of getting them, or if you're within inches of getting that down or getting them to care about whatever you're presenting, have something ready that will transition them into researching themselves, or maybe something that will get them to care about something else. But have something ready that's just like running the ball a couple inches. Like, don't have a conspiracy theory about reptilians or Bilderbergs ready to Hail Mary pass for a touchdown when you have inches to go for a fourth down. It doesn't make sense. So to continue with the example a little bit more, if they have this huge defense built up and they keep sacking you, you're probably not going to get that down, and you should probably just punt. But remember, the game is still on, and your tactics would need to change if you ever pick up that ball again with that opponent or fellow American. Ultimately, the goal is to win the game, which is to convert someone who doesn't care into someone who does. And first downs are obviously getting them to care about things you care about. But winning the game is getting them to care about things themselves, not only socially, politically, but also mentally or even spiritually. And finally, I would just say that there will be a lot of people who will always choose self-preservation over activism, but it's important to have an imprint on everyone you interact with. So when it comes time for those who choose their own preservation over yours, it's not them sending you to the gulags, but at least them understanding the dangers of your common enemy. So they might or would choose to at least understand that the game of self-preservation doesn't save them in the end. Anyways, that's I had messed up on the outro. That's it for me. I'll catch you guys on the next one.